Hey there, it's Aiden. Today, I'm here to teach you all about Pokemon randomization and emulation. So, what is that? Well, Pokemon. You probably know it. Big franchise, one of the biggest media franchises in the world. Games, cards, whatever you can imagine. Great games. Personal, huge fan. A few of my friends love to play them together and make them a little bit more challenging. One of the ways you do that is like Nuzlocke, self-imposed challenges. One of the other ways we've been doing lately has been by taking Pokemon games, putting them on PC, and then randomizing them. So today I'm going to how to find the games themselves, how to find your emulator, how to find the randomizer, and of course then how to put the games in the randomizer together and how to run them on the emulator. That being said, let's jump right into that. And we're here. So now that you are ready to get started, let's do it. First thing you're going to do is pick out which Pokemon game that you're going to play. It's going to very slightly differ what path you take here. For our intents and purposes, let's say we're going to do Pokemon White, but I will cover how to do both ones. The big difference is whether you're playing a 2D Pokemon game or a 3D Pokemon game. 2D Pokemon will use some older stuff, 3D Pokemon uses some newer stuff. So once you've decided that, you can go ahead and get your game ROM. So as you can see here, I've just looked up Pokemon White ROM. You can do this for any Pokemon game. Most of these sites are fine. ROMspedia is one of the main ones. I personally like HexROM. I've never had any problems with viruses come from them in at least 30 downloads per site. But important quality of life notice: don't pirate games. Wink. Anywho, once you have your game downloaded, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be Pokemon White. That's just the example here. You can go ahead and close that window. Hopefully you have that downloaded. Then you're going to look up UP Randomizer. Now, this is pretty much the universal Pokemon randomizer. The issue is it's not entirely universal, and this is where one of your two differences comes in. If you're playing a 2DS Pokemon, or not 2DS, sorry, 2D Pokemon game, you're going to go on and take Universal Pokemon Game Randomizer. It's right here. You go down to downloads, and you can just download whichever version you need, whether that's for Windows XP. I know it's for 2016. It is kind of outdated. Alternatively, you can just do the other one that I'll get to in a second, but this is the one I usually use for that. It's got a lot more options than some of the modern stuff. Now, alternatively, if you're looking to do a 3D Pokemon game, then you're going to need to very slightly change it. You're going to scroll down a little bit farther and go to this github.com Arjama release. 4.51 and some of the earlier ones as well. I usually just download the most recent from him. But 4.51 works fine. That one will allow you to do 3D randomizers. So let's say you download that. I'm not downloading them because I already have them downloaded, but you'll go through setup for that. It's fairly simple. The last thing you're going to need is your emulator. So this can work for any game too. It's important to know this is not necessarily a Pokemon or randomizer specific thing. You could play any DS game you could think of really on an emulator if you can find it to download. The emulator I recommend for 2D games is called Desmume. It's spelled on the screen here. It works fine. You go to desmume.org, take the most recent release. It's going to be your best friend. That works for all 2D games. And I know, interestingly. Anyway, that works for all the 2D Pokemon games. You'll go through some setup for that, and we'll get to how that'll look in a second. If you're doing a 3D Pokemon game, you're going to want Citra emulator here. It looks like this little orange is the skin. This one works for the 3DS games. So this is if you're going to play like a 3D, say, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire or Pokemon X or whatever, as well as other 3DS games, like you can see over here, Mario's we played. Really, anything you can think of, you can play on computer for free, slightly illegally. But we don't worry about that. So anyway, you're going to download that, go through a little bit of setup. Depending on which one you want, I'll pop them both open. So Citra, when you open it up, you want to go through Citra Nightly. It's important. None of the other ones will open, but you'll figure out what I mean by that here in a second. And for Desmume, it's going to look a little something like this. So these are the two different emulators on screen now. But honestly, actually, it's important to know, if you just want to play Pokemon on your computer, you don't care about the randomizer, you're done. All you have to do now is hit File, Open ROM, and pick out your ROM. For example, I have this old Soul Silver one that I used to play. And before you know it, you're playing Pokemon Soul Silver. Like, I don't know why it's there. You can play the game. Now, I'm going to close that because it is quite loud. But That's the important part. You can just do that. However, if you're like me and you want to add a little bit of extra spice to your game, I highly recommend Randomizer. So once you have downloaded UP Randomizer, you're going to open it. And after setup, it'll look a little something like this. And here is where it gets a little tricky. You're going to go ahead and open ROM. Let's say I'm doing... Oh, I don't know where they're buried here. Hold on. I'm going to do Alpha Sapphire. That didn't work. I'm going to do Heartsil. That's fine. So I'm going to do Pokemon Heart Gold. I know that usually this red doesn't appear. This is because this is an already randomized one. So I'm not going to save any of this thing when I'm doing it. But basically, I'm going to go through and change. So this is where you get to have your fun. This is where you get to choose how your Pokemon game's going to go on. Do you want to play race mode? Do you want to shuffle their stats? Do you want to change their types? You could have a Squirtle, a basic water type that is dragon flying, if that's what you want to do. Do you want to change their evolution so that like every level they evolve into something different? Or just when they evolve, they're no longer their evolutions, where you could just change their strength, their typing, or change their possible evolutions, anything you could want. You can change your starter Pokemon. You can change static Pokemon. You can change in-game trades. You can change really any stat you want. There are so many. I'm not going to go through all of them. You can look through all of them on your own. But there's moves. There's faux Pokemon, your Flings of Light. Most importantly, I find, is your wild Pokemon. That's going to make up a lot of your game, is catching your random Pokemon that are around the map. I highly recommend area 1-to-1 mapping. Basically, what that means is that when you go into a route, it's not that like all of the Pokemon everywhere can be any type. Like you're just going to run into like 30 different Pokemon in one route. It's going to stay in groupings like it would be a normal game. In a standard Pokemon game, you have a route. And in that route, and I'll put there'll be a picture here. In that route, there are maybe 5 different types of Pokemon with different percentages of how often they can appear. When you do this, it keeps those percentages, but changes what Pokemon fill those slots. Global is on a map base. Every single Pokemon everywhere has changed. And random is you never know what you're going to run into. You could walk in the same tile of grass 40 times and get a different Pokemon every time. That's just how it works. There's some things that steal on the strength, so that like you don't run into legendaries first route. I find that boring. TMs, HMs, those are fun. Items, very fun. You could get like 7 Master Balls if you're lucky, like my freaking cousin, and whatnot. And then, actually, I take it all back. The single most important part of any of that I'm telling you right now is this one thing. Put on fastest text. Do it. You're going to cry if you don't, especially if you're playing a 3DS, especially if you're playing Sun and Moon. I mean, even like Black and White, those games love Pokemon dearly. Boy, is the text slow, especially in the older games. And so if you put on faster text, it'll skip right through. You can literally not read anything. You can just mash enter. I do it all the time. But anyway, so let's say you do that, and all these other things, you're going to hit randomize. You hit randomize, you'll get a slot. I usually throw them in ROMs, or I'll throw them in another like thing somewhere. I usually just put them in downloads, honestly. You save. Now this is going to add a new file to your computer. It's going to be a .nds for this. And then you could save a log if you want. I usually don't. They're just kind of a waste of space. If you're trying to do like a race where somebody else and you have the same seed, you can use this random seed here and put that in your game to play. And then, so that you can send that to them, they can put it through their randomizer via load settings here, or pre-made seed. They can put it in. And then you guys could play the same randomized file and see like who could be at the first gym first or whatever. Now, once you have that, as I've already shown, I'm going to pop up Desmume. I click, I'm going to go File, Open ROM. Let's say I'm going to play, what's a good one? We'll just pull out Soul Silver. I am going to really quickly lower its volume though, because it is quite loud. That is my one major complaint for a lot of these, is they're very loud. Now I'll go ahead and switch over to in-game view. All right, now we're just in the game. So this, you go ahead and set up. So usually the first thing I would recommend doing is configuring your settings, specifically your controller configurations. So mine apparently did not save, which is mildly annoying. So I play a lot of games that use WASD. So I recommend using WASD for your movement. I personally like R for B, A for E, so that I can switch between the two of them pretty easily. And then I just do T and Y. Oh, usually I do the other ways that they are saved. Enter is fine. Most of these are fine. Q, I usually take it. I'll do like 1 and 2 sometimes for these. I don't know why it's showing up. Ping 6 custom ID. That's fine. So I'll save those, and now I can get right in. So I can press E, and then I'm playing Pokemon. No info needed. I already know this stuff. The touchscreen will work with your mouse, so I can touch through this. But look how fast this text goes. Obviously, you have your little cutscenes like this that are gonna still be blocked, but like it is so pretty to not have to wait. You can choose your character and whatnot. But yeah, really, you're just playing Pokemon. I'll cut through really quick so you guys can see what I mean. All right, so as you can see, I have a Togepi. I went ahead and played a little bit of this game just to get it off in. This is the starter Pokemon. This is what I've got. My options were not great, I'll say, but they were fine. Interestingly enough, I didn't think about it. This is a terrible run. Ability, though, not one of its usual abilities because we randomized abilities. No item, unfortunately. I would lose this run instantly. I will have that be known that because this Pokemon cannot attack, I would not stand a chance at winning. But let's see what we get in our first try. Usually like a Pidgey or something. That's a Rapidash. And that's how you know your game's randomized. So you get all these sorts of things that allow you to do. And there you have it. That's how you randomize Pokemon. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. Yeah, seriously. That's it. See ya.